All right, and we're recording. All right, so good morning, everybody. We're lucky today. We have with us guest speaker, John Eric Kawamoto. So he's going to give you obviously a talk about his fitness route. He owns his own fitness facility, JK Conditioning, correct? Yeah, JK
hmm
Conditioning, JKC. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
and John actually has hired. I assume he still works with you, Thomas. So John has
Yep.
actually hired somebody out of the kinesiology program. I won't
hmm
say much more about his past. I'm interested to hear more about it myself. So before I forget, though, I just want to say, John, thanks very much for taking the time to come in and speak with the class. Really appreciate
Very
it.
welcome. Very welcome. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right, I'm going to mute myself and you go right ahead.
Alrighty. Hello, everyone. It's interesting to talk to a screen and not know who's on the other side, but I would assume that there's people listening to this. So thanks for listening to me today before I start. So again, as Kevin said, my name is John, and I own a fitness business here in St. John's called JK Conditioning. And today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my route on how I started off in kinesiology. I was doing the math yesterday, and it was 21 years ago that I got into university to do my undergrad in kinesiology. So it's crazy how time flies. And I was also appreciative to do this little presentation up because it kind of brought me back and kind of reminded me kind of what I went through to get to where I am today. So hopefully, it's not too boring for you to listen to my talk about my route, but I do want to hopefully instill some inspiration on you today and to teach you just sort of what I had to do to get to where I am. So um, anyways, my presentation is called The Fitness Route. So again, I'm John Eric Kawamoto. I'm a certified kinesiologist. I'm also a strength and conditioning specialist, and I'll talk a little bit about these credentials later. But I'm the founder and co-owner of JK Conditioning, a small group training, nutrition, and run coaching business here in St. John's. And I'm also a freelance fitness writer. So I will get into that a little bit later in the presentation. All right, so the beginning. When I was young, I played sports from as long as I can remember. I was always active. Um, I wasn't the greatest at everything, but I loved playing all kinds of sports from when I was super young. And I grew up in Burnaby, BC. So I'm from the other side of Canada. And I'll talk a little bit about how I got here a little bit later. But that red dot on the far left of your screen is where I grew up. So I don't know if any of you have actually been to Vancouver or British Columbia before, but it's beautiful. And I moved from there in 2011 to St. John's. So as I said, I was always really active as a kid. So that's me on the left-hand side. I was really small, but I was active, and I was always playing sports in my parents' backyard. I was always playing pickup games. I was a part of every sports team in elementary school, and I was also voted biggest jock in grade 12. And I loved being active, and I loved playing sports. But at the same time, going through high school and everything, I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I grew up. I knew I liked sciences. I was pretty good with numbers, and I really disliked English, and I disliked reading, and I disliked writing essays. But I knew I liked sciences, so I was wondering, well, what can I do? What can I do with that? And a lot of my friends, excuse me, were going to university, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to go to university too because I wanted to follow them. And because I lived in Burnaby, I decided to go to a university that was 10 minutes from my house. So I applied to Simon Fraser University, which is a beautiful campus. And like I said, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I've heard of this thing called kinesiology at a sort of career fair in grade 12. And I had no idea what kinesiology was. I've never heard of the word before, but I knew it had to do with exercise. And because I always worked out and I always enjoyed playing sports, I was like, well, this looks like a good career path. Why don't I go into kinesiology? And I knew I didn't want to go into English. I didn't want to go into history. Didn't want to go into just math or just science, and I didn't know what I wanted to do with it, but I was like, I'm going to apply and see if I can get in. So I'm not sure if it's the same right now, but when I had to apply to kinesiology, I needed to have a certain grade level to get into the program because it was an applied science. So rather than just getting into school, I had to have decent grades to get into the School of Kinesiology to do my undergrad. So luckily I did. I had good grades, I had good work ethic, and that allowed me to get into the program right away from my first year, which was in the year 2000. So I spent 5 years doing my undergrad, and they changed the name since I left. So now it's called an undergrad in biomedical physiology and kinesiology. And I also did a co-op term. So when I went there, it wasn't such as a fancy name as that, but it was just, I believe it was just applied science and kinesiology co-op. So what I did during this time was, so I ran track and field and played volleyball throughout high school. So I continued to do track and field throughout university. I'm not sure if any of you in this program are a part of a varsity team, but it was a life-changing experience for me. I met my future wife on the team, who I'm still with, obviously, today. I'll talk a little bit about her later. But anyways, I did varsity track and field and cross country. I was in the kinesiology co-op program, and this was sort of this chunk of my life, this 5 year period here. And what I thought would help me get a job in the future after I graduated was doing co-op. So I know there's a co-op term, there's a co-op program here, and I've actually been throwing the idea around with my staff about actually starting a co-op relationship with the university. So that might be something that we're going to bring into fruition hopefully this fall. But co-op was a very influential time for me, and an influential part of the kinesiology program, because it gave me a taste of what fields I could get into, what jobs I could get into after I graduated with my kinesiology degree. Because again, at the time, I just knew that kinesiology had to do with science, it had to do with exercise, but I didn't really know what I could do with it after. And I think many of you are in this boat right now. I know some of you might be in the actual kinesiology program right now, and some of you might not be, and some of you might want to get into it. And this is why this course exists by Kevin, to give you an idea of what you can do with kinesiology. So what I would encourage, if you are interested in following a career in kinesiology, would be to do the co-op program so that you can get jobs in fields of kinesiology. So you can get a sense of, oh, I like that, oh, I don't like that. And then you can sort of navigate your way through and decide what you want to do after you graduate. So I did 4 co-op terms. They were either 4 to 8 months long, and my first term was at a gym. By the time I started this co-op term, I had worked in a shoe store. That was my first job out of high school, and that was my introduction to customer service. And it was Athletes World, if you guys are familiar with that. I know it's not here anymore. I think now it's Sports Experts, but it used to be Athletes World. Anyways, so they were commission based, and you had to sort of work for your money. You either got a base pay, which is really low, or if you sold more than you needed to, you would be bumped into getting commission for the work that you had to do. So back when I started working there, I learned the power of customer service, and how important that is in building relationships with people, even if it's just for 20 minutes if they're buying a pair of shoes. And this has stuck with me to this day, of how important customer service is in your relationships in a work environment. And if some of you now are working, maybe it's Tim Hortons, maybe it's, maybe it's in the mall, maybe it's at Lululemon, I'm not sure, but don't take that job lightly, because you're going to learn a lot of skills, if you're open to it, that will influence you down the road. And I take a lot of lessons that I learned 25 years ago at Athletes World and have applied them to all the different jobs that I worked at. and then continually apply them to my philosophy of how I conduct my business and how I like my staff to conduct their relationships with our clients and future clients at JK Conditioning. So anyways, my first co-op term was at a gym called Olympic Athletic Club. It was in Vancouver, and it was a 50-minute drive to get there, and it was a 50-minute drive to get home, sometimes an hour, just because, again, I lived in Burnaby. And you learn a lot by having the discipline of getting to a gym or getting to work at like 6 in the morning, so that you have to be there when it opens, and you have to greet everyone. And it was my sort of first introduction to how a gym operates. And I think, looking back, I'm taking a lot of the information I learned from working there and definitely have applied it to starting my own business here today. And these are things that you might not think about as being a person that works in a gym. It's not just being a personal trainer, it's not just being a kinesiologist, but it's working the front desk, and it's handing out towels, and it's doing the laundry so that you have clean towels. It's signing up memberships. It's cleaning sweaty equipment that people use that they don't clean up. It's putting weights away. It's managing the schedule. If you're managing, a personal training schedule, there's so many things that you need to take into account when working at a gym, if that is the route that you're going to take. But anyways, that was a very influential time for me, and again, I was very influenced by my time there. My next co-op term was at a place called Paris Orthotics, and this is a place where, again, it was in the field of kinesiology, but had nothing to do with the gym, which was a nice contrast coming from Olympic Athletic Club. And here I was the orthopedic brace fitter, so people would come in with sore knees, ankle sprains, and elbow pain, and we would have over-the-counter braces that we would help fit them with. But it was also a place where they had podorthists working to make orthotics for people's feet and footwear. So we had to manage the front desk and book clients, or patients, I should say, and do reminder calls and take in stock in the receiving bay and make sure the front end looked clean. And it was just a nice contrast, because it gave me a sense of like, all right, well, if I don't want to work in a gym, then maybe I can go down the road that is a little bit more specialized, where I can work with more of an injured population and fit them with braces and whatnot. So anyways, I was appreciative of my time at Paris Orthotics. What I did here was I did two co-op terms at once. I did an 8-month term here, so I did a part-time placement at Paris Orthotics, and I also did a part-time placement at the same time at a physiotherapy clinic called Pacific Coast Rehab, and this was in North Vancouver. So this was also nice because it got me to work in a different part of Metro Vancouver, and I was an exercise therapist here. So what I did here is that I assisted physiotherapists in teaching exercises to, so this was sort of my first taste at teaching exercises. I got a little bit of it at Olympic Athletic Club. I didn't do a lot of training there because they needed us to do all the other stuff. They had their own trainers. So this was actually my first taste into taking someone one-on-one and teaching them how to do an exercise. I was petrified because I wasn't, sure, and it was a new experience for me, but it was all a great experience overall. So anyways, like I said, I did a part-time term here while I was doing my other part-time at Paris Orthotics. So this was 8 months. Went back to school, did a few more semesters, and then I did my last term at another rehab kinesiology clinic called Symmetrics. And this was a place where I actually, I had my first paid one-on-one personal training client at this place, and this was in 2005. So this was a long time ago. And at the same time as that, I did their newsletter. So I started learning a bit about writing, technical writing, on how I can put information that I learned in school into a article format that a workout familiar person or someone who did not have any kinesiology background, they could read an article and learn, oh, okay, these are some stretches I could do if I have an Achilles issue, or these are some exercises I could do to challenge my abs, or these are some exercises I could do to challenge my chest. This was my first taste into technical writing, which gave me a sense of what it would be like to write these types of essays, if you will, compared to what I didn't like writing in high school and university, which were actual essays, on topics that I really didn't care about. But I did like writing about fitness, and this played a huge role in my path as a fitness writer, which again, I'll touch on later. One thing I forgot to say, I'd like this to be a little bit more of an interactive lecture. So if you guys have questions during my talk, just throw them in the question Q&A box, and Kevin will ask the question, because I don't want you guys to fall asleep or to let your mind wander. I want you to be sort of focusing and listening to what I have to say. So please ask any questions if you have any. So after I finished at Symmetrics, okay, perfect. So I finished, I graduated in 2005. And the funny thing is, I said to myself, I was like, you know what? I don't really like personal training. I don't think I want to do that after. And I don't know why I said that, but that was just sort of a thought I had at the time. And boy, was I wrong. Because after I graduated, I was like, all right, well, I have a degree in kinesiology co-op. I did two other sort of like focuses during that time. So I had like a health and fitness certificate and a nutrition certificate. And those were just sort of recognitions that you got while after you graduated, if you did a certain number of courses in those topics. So that's what I graduated with. And I was like, well, I don't know what to do. It was ironic that, so like I said, I ran track and field. So I went to massage therapy often to get injuries and stuff sorted out. So my massage therapist that I went to owned a clinic, and he had a kinesiologist working for him that I knew from SFU, from Simon Fraser, and he was leaving. He was moving on to a different job. So my massage therapist asked, hey, John, I know you're graduating. Do you want to take over his workload? And the job just kind of fell in my lap. And I said, yes, I would love to work for you and take this on. So that's how I got my first job out of kinesiology. After graduating with my undergrad, I got a job as in BC, we call them a registered kinesiologist. So I was a registered kinesiologist. I was also a personal trainer, and I took over the workload from a fellow friend and a kinesiologist at the Burnaby Square Clinic, which was 5 minutes from my house. So it couldn't have sort of happened any easier, but this is what I did for the next 5 years from 2006 to 2011. So JK Conditioning, which is the company that I own, it was born in 2006. So the reason that I had to come up with a name is because the person that I took over was a contractor, and I had no idea about being a contractor or being my own business because he was not an employee at the clinic. He was self-employed. So I had to come up with a name. I had to change all the accounting stuff with the CRA and become a sole proprietor, and that changed how the taxes were done. And I wanted a name for the company that I was. And there was another famous gym in the city called Twist Conditioning, and you guys probably don't know this, but they were famous in training hockey players. Peter Twist is his name, and I was like, I like that idea, so I copied him, and I said JK Conditioning is what it is. So JK, John Kawamoto, JK Conditioning. So JK Conditioning was born back then, and I had a friend help me design a logo, and here we are. So I took over the workload that the kinesiologist left me. And what I did was I was a registered kinesiologist. So I designed workout programs and stretches for people who were injured in car accidents. So I dealt a lot with people who they were in pain. They didn't want to be there, but they knew they had to be because they had insurance claims. And I helped them improve with pain, mobility, and functionality so that they could get back to work. I had to report to health professionals, so other physiotherapists, massage therapists, chiropractors, and I also had to report to their insurance adjuster to let them know what was going on. So if you're not familiar with this sort of idea, if you get injured in a car accident or if you get injured at work, your insurance might pay for you to go see a physio, a massage, a chiro, or a kinesiologist to learn exercises to help you get better from your injuries. So this is what I did. A large chunk of my clientele were injured people. And like I said, I had to deal with insurance adjusters and write reports for them, initial reports, discharge reports, progress reports on how the client presented, what progress they made, if any, and what my recommendations were after. Could they get back to work? Did they need more treatments? Did they need to go back to physio? Were they regressing? So that was a large chunk of it. And I did not learn a lot of this stuff in school. I did not really learn a lot about exercises for injuries. I didn't learn how, I never knew how to write a report for an insurance adjuster. So I had to take in as much information as I could from the previous kinesiologist and tell me, okay, this is what I did. Here's an example report. This is how you take your measurements. This is how you do an assessment. And these were kind of all new things that I unfortunately didn't learn in school. So what I want you to realize is that after you graduate with kinesiology, if you go down this road, there is so much more learning that you need to do after in order to be able to do your job. So learning doesn't end when you finish university. There are so many different things that I had to learn in books and in weekend courses, weekend seminars that I was then able to use in my job as a kinesiologist to make me a better kinesiologist. So that was sort of one half of my duties. The other half was working with what I prefer today is working with people who wanted to improve their health, wanted to improve their fitness, wanted to run a better 10K time. So I was designing workouts for personal training clients. And for me, there was a big difference between a injured person and someone who sort of wanted to be there out of their own will. And I don't want to paint a bad light on sort of the injury rehab side of things. But for me, maybe it was just the people I was working with, but there's different motives when people come to you if they have an insurance claim versus people that come to you if they're paying out of their own pocket. And for me, I really enjoyed working with people that just wanted to improve their fitness and that were sort of like your general population. Now, a lot of trainers, if you ever talk to them, they're going to be like, I want to train elites. I want to train athletes and I only want to work with athletes and I don't want to work with anyone else. I don't want to train anyone if they've never been to a gym before. That's going to waste my time. And I was actually the quite opposite. I wanted to work with people who had a clean slate and never worked out before and wanted to learn how to do a proper squat and wanted to learn how to deadlift and wanted to learn to lift weights to be safe and to, improve their goals and improve their ability to reach their goals. So for me, this is the clientele that I resonated with. And I'm super happy that I had this experience because it taught me what it was like to work with sort of injuries, to deal with adjusters, to deal with other healthcare professionals. But it also taught me how it was to work with other people who weren't injured and who just wanted to be there to improve their health and their fitness.
John, I'm gonna jump in there.
Yeah,
I just want to say, so I mean, there's a question from a student first,
perfect.
or well, I'll get to that in a second, but I just wanted to say too, so I never gave this group my background, but I also did some training as well. And uh, one of the things that I noticed was, so I was basically the person you just described. Not that I didn't want to work with anybody who wasn't an athlete, but I
Mm,
preferred to work with athletes. So we worked with some
mm,
varsity teams when I was in undergrad and masters and that kind of stuff. But I
mm,
also had a stint at an occupational therapy clinic, which I don't even know if it's still running. It was a private owned clinic. And I was a kinesiologist there for a couple of weeks because their kinesiologist was not going on summer vacation. So I was filling in. And I had the exact same experience as you. It was a real eye opener for me that the
mm.
people who go to rehab clinics and all, you don't want to paint a bad picture. My experience was
Yeah.
the same as yours, that the motives, the desire to want to get better wasn't
Mm.
there for everybody. It was for
That's
some,
right.
but it wasn't for
Mm.
everybody. So it's quite
That's right.
interesting. It was a very big learning experience for me as well.
Yeah.
Um, Now, there was a question from a student. So, just how did you stay in the know of the seminars? So, I guess the weekend seminars and stuff that you had to do to bring yourself up to speed. And what kind of seminars were they?
Good questions. So during my undergrad, there were well, so there wasn't a lot of social media and stuff back then. So there were bulletin boards where I could find out about courses that were being offered to kinesiology students or kinesiology graduates. So I started taking my courses in university that were outside of school. So these were courses that I had to pay for separately for my tuition to learn things such as, so I know I'm familiar with your undergrad program because I did my master's at MUN, which I'll get to, and I did teach at MUN and did some labs with you guys, which I'll touch on later. But when I graduated, there wasn't a lot on exercise sort of technique coaching and or program design and or how to do an assessment. So these were things that I needed to seek elsewhere. So my first taste of that was in school and through bulletin boards, because the school wants you to succeed and they want you to get a job when you're finished. So they would have reputable people advertise their courses, and that's where I started. And then from there, it kind of snowballed because in my advice page that I'll get to at the end of the seminar, my big thing is network. You have to network with people, and by going to these, you first network with your peers and also with your professors, because they're going to know something that you don't know, and you want to learn as much as you can from them. But I also networked with people that were also in the courses that I took outside of my undergrad, because through them, I could learn about other courses that I would not have heard about, because again, at the time, like I said, there was no social media really. There wasn't a lot of, stuff on Instagram or Facebook that I could just find. So a lot of it was through networking and bulletin boards. So hopefully that answered your question. So this was 2005 to 2011. So at the time, and I still do, I really enjoy it. I always wanted to be in a magazine. And I didn't know if this was an ego thing, but I wanted to be in a magazine somehow, in some way, whether it was writing for them or just being in the pictures, demoing the exercises for a magazine. So luckily, to this day, I can say I've done both. So in 2009, I took another weekend course, and it was how to write a pitch letter. And I had no idea what a pitch letter was, but it was a way that you could try to get in to the very competitive market of writing for fitness magazines. And for me, to this day, I still find it super cool to see my name or my face in a nationally or an international magazine or a publication. So like I said, I ran throughout high school and university. So I had a knack for running. I really had a passion for it, but I also had a passion for lifting weights and improving my strength in the gym. So I combine those passions to strength training runners. So in 2009, the top magazines for running were Runner's World, which is from the States, and another magazine called Running Times. And during this year, the first issue of Canadian Running came out, and they were brand new, and it was a Canadian-based magazine, so national level magazine. And I knew that they had one issue, and I knew what they covered in that one issue, which meant that I could approach their editor with the information that I learned in the How to Write a Pitch article course and say, you guys haven't covered this topic yet. I think it's really important for runners. I'm going to hit you with this idea. Let me know what you think. So this was in March 2009. I had my first article in Canadian Running. This is the article. I didn't name it, but they called it Butt It Out. And if you remember, I said I never liked writing, but I did like writing technical pieces on how to do exercises and how to help your injuries. And I wrote this article. I submitted it. It was terrible. I read the article in the magazine after, and I was like, I didn't write that. They edited almost every word. And I was like, oh God, Well, at least it's in the, at least I'm in a magazine, right? So I wasn't offended, but I was super happy to see my name in this national magazine. So a couple steps back, how did I do this? So inside each magazine, you're going to notice your editorial team, and some magazines have email addresses for those editors. I grabbed the email address for the current editor at the time, and I set it up in this fancy email that advertised my knowledge and my interest in running and how I had this idea and how it would benefit the readers. And what do you think? And I didn't hear back. And I was discouraged, and I wasn't very, I should say, persistent at the time. So I didn't even write a follow-up. I was just so like, oh my God, he didn't email me. This is it. It's over. 4 months later, I got an email from the editor, and then he was like, hey, you still interested in writing this? And I was like, yes, yes, I am. It's so nice to hear from you. So a couple things I learned from that is that you need to be patient with this industry if you do want to get into writing, because editors are crazy busy and they're underpaid and they're overworked and they have so many things on their plate that they need to deal with. And one little kid who wants to write for their magazine is the least of their worries, even if the idea is really cool. But what I also learned is I probably should have followed up a week later, not to be too annoying, but just to say, hey, I sent you an email last week. I'm really keen on writing an article for your publication. If you haven't had a chance to read it yet, please take your time and read it. If you don't like this idea, how about this idea? So you always want to kind of like keep selling yourself, because that's what you're trying to do here. You're trying to sell an article. You're trying to sell yourself to these magazine publishers, because they're thinking like, should I buy this person? Would my readers, would they want to buy this article? Would they want to read it? So I learned a lot through this first article, and this was back in 2009, and this was really cool because you could get this magazine in Vancouver and you could also get it all the way into St. John's. So I thought that was really cool. So I persisted with writing, and I learned a little bit more about myself, different ideas on how to train runners, and a snowball effect happened. So based on the first article that got published, I approached the same editor when the article came out, and I said, hey, I just saw the new issue. My article looks great. Thanks so much for including me and for giving me the opportunity. Now that I have your attention, what do you think about this idea for the next article, for the next issue? So while you have their attention, you got to keep it by selling more. And this is where my experience in customer service came back to me from Athletes World, because it's always about selling yourself, especially when you leave university. And this doesn't have to be in the fitness career. This can in a fitness route. It can be in anything that you're trying to do. If you're trying to go to med school, trying to go anywhere else, you got to sell yourself. So I kept selling myself to this running magazine because I wanted to be in every issue. And sometimes they denied my sort of idea. Sometimes they're like, well, what about a twist on it? What if we do it like this? I was like, yeah, sure, I could do that. So in my first year, I had 5 publications, 3 in Canadian running and 2 in a Western magazine called Impact Magazine. Not as big of a distribution, but this magazine came out in BC and Alberta. And what I did here was, when I approached the editor, same idea, I wrote a pitch, but now I could say, I've also written for Canadian running and I have national sort of recognition. My advice is sound. And what do you think about this idea for you? So kind of snowballing the momentum, I slowly got into more and more magazines because I was able to sell myself and to sell my experience in other issues and other magazines to get into new ones that I've never been in before. So fast forward to today, I expanded my sort of readership from the endurance-based athlete to female fitness and male fitness, if we were to, differentiate it between women and men. I wrote for Oxygen Magazine, which is a publisher in the States. I eventually got into Running Times, which was a big goal of mine. I also got into Runner's World. I got into Strong, which is a Canadian publication, Inside Fitness, which is Canadian. The biggest one for me was Men's Fitness, because I used to read this magazine as a kid, and Men's Fitness is based in the States, and they have distribution all throughout America and Canada. So if you got my magazine, if you got the magazine in Texas, you would see my name in it. And I thought that was one of the coolest things. And Reps was another Canadian-based magazine company. Muscle and Fitness is a sister publication to Men's Fitness. So I was able to get in there, and Muscle Mag does another one. So what I learned through this process was that I could use my experience to get more experience. And I was so happy that I got the break for Canadian Running because I had wrote nothing for them and nothing at all, but he gave me a chance. And I knew that was rare, and I used that momentum to get me into new experiences and to new publications that I wouldn't have normally got into. So if I started off big and I tried to go into Men's Fitness or Muscle and Fitness or Oxygen, I probably wouldn't have got in because they have their writers already and they already have an experienced set of writers, but I had none. So I took a chance going in Canadian Running. But again, like I said, I knew that they were brand new and they didn't have sort of their team already. So I wanted to be a part of their team and show that, well, I know information that would be important for you guys too. So this was my sort of path with fitness writing. And it's really great because it keeps me on top of my toes with the latest research. And it continues my understanding of the exercises and the workouts because I have to write it down. And if I can write it well and write it in a way that readers can understand and digest, then I'll be able to distill it better to clients. And remember when I said that that first article I wrote was edited like crazy? Well, the articles now are minimally edited, and I can say that I've definitely learned how to write for the different publications. Each publication has their own voice and their own way of talking, so you kind of have to match what you write to each magazine readership. If you're writing for men, it might sound different than if you're writing for women, and it would definitely sound different if you're writing for, you know, a distance runner, someone who doesn't want to build a lot of muscle, but they want to be strong for, you know, a 10K or a half marathon. So there's a lot of things that I learned through this process, and like I said, it was actually more for selfish reasons, but I'm really happy through it that I can help people with different mediums rather than just sort of having them in front of me. So the next 10 years. So that brought us to 2011. So in 2011, my wife and I, so at the time we weren't married, but she was from St. John's, and I met her on the track team, and we decided to move back to St. John's in 2011. So one other reason why I wanted to move to St. John's was to do my master's. So I wrote an article for Canadian Running, and it was called Stand Your Ground, and it was on unstable surface training. So unstable surface training is when you stand on a BOSU or a balance disc to do exercises. And I wrote an article for them saying how it has its place, but it's not where you should focus your training if you're healthy. And I used a research article called Not All Instability Training Devices Enhance Muscle Activation in Highly Resistance Trained Individuals. I realized that the author was David Bem, and I looked up a few more of his articles, his research articles, and I really liked what he had presented. And I realized the next line down says that he's from St. John's, Newfoundland. And I was like, okay, this is too weird. So Sunday night, I email Dave. I go on the MON website, I email Dave, and I say, hey, my name is John. I've been out of school for when did I graduate? 2005, so 6 years. Been out of school for 6 years. I'm an experienced trainer. I write for magazines, and I want to get my MSc, and I want to learn about critiquing research papers so that I could write better articles for the layperson, but I also wanted to have the experience of going through a master's program and master's thesis and having experience with hopefully teaching. So what do you say? Do you have a wait list? How long would it take to get into you? And remember, this was Sunday night, and I wasn't expecting a reply immediately, and I wasn't expecting a reply at all. And I was also expecting that there would be a big wait list because of how popular David was in the academic field, in academics of strength and conditioning. But it was only a couple hours later on a Sunday night, and he got back to me and he said, "I'd love to have you. Let's jump on a call next week and sort it all out." So this is how I started my master's at Memorial. So I did grad school. in exercise physiology, School of Human Kinetics, where you guys are now. And I did a thesis that got published. So I got a publication out of it. And this was probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do, was to write my transcript for this article, to do the research, and to do my my paper leading up to this. It was a big undertaking, as you can imagine, but it was a great way for me to learn about research, what it takes to do research, how critical you need to be of each thing that you measure when you do research. But it also gave me the experience to teach, which was awesome, because I did love teaching. I had an idea that I did love teaching because I love teaching clients about exercises and why they should work out. So I wanted to take that up a notch and teach people like you, teach university students. So Dave was nice enough to hook me up with a couple lab instructor positions. There was a course, HKR 1001, that became available to teach as a sessional. There were some issues going on there, and they needed a emergency instructor. And because of my experience, I knew I was an older grad student. Dave asked me to do it. So I jumped in and I made my own slides and became a sessional instructor for that semester. And I thought that was amazing, because that's what I wanted to do, is I wanted to get teaching experience. And at the time of doing this, I thought I wanted to be a staff member at the university. I thought I wanted to teach. I didn't think I wanted to do my PhD, but I did enjoy lab instructing, and I thought maybe I could continue to do that after I graduated without a PhD. So that was kind of where my head was at this time. But in 2013, an opportunity came up to rent a gym space. At this time, I wasn't doing any personal training. I stopped to focus on my master's. My mom was sick, so I had to go back and forth between St. John's and BC. But in 2013, this opportunity came up, and I was like, okay, I guess I'm going back into the field of training. So this was all while I was finishing my master's. So this space here was what it looked like when I first saw it. So this was a corporate gym. This is where the gym is today. It's on Kenmount Road, the Subaru dealership, second floor. They had a they had a corporate gym there for their staff, closed to the public, and they had this equipment there. They had some weights. They already had rubber flooring. And again, like I said, the opportunity came up. So I said, yeah, okay, I'm going to go start a personal training business here again. Because again, like I did in BC, I was a personal trainer. But I thought I was going to maybe move away from that as I did my master's, but something pulled me back to it. So fast forward to today, and the gym looks a lot different. So it's been a slow evolution, but this is the gym space today. JK Conditioning actually has a physical space that we can say it's our own. When I was JK Conditioning back in Burnaby, I was working out of that massage physiotherapy clinic. So it's really cool to see JK Conditioning on the wall and have our own dedicated space. So that's my wife, that's Julia there, that's me in the middle, and that's my other employee, Thomas. So he's full-time salary, and we do small group personalized training. Julia takes care of the nutrition and the run coaching. And before getting to Thomas, I had gone through 3 part-time staff that all came through the kinesiology program at MUN. But Thomas is the one who was our first full-time employee, and he's still with us today, and I believe he'll be 6 years this July. And JK Conditioning is turning 8 this May, which is really cool. As in St. John's, like I said, I've had JK Conditioning since 2006, but it's physical space. This kind of the anniversary that we use. So anyways, we do small group training, and the way that we run our sessions is that instead of just doing one-on-one training, where you trade 1 hour of your time to work with one person, our schedule got so busy that we're like, oh, well, why don't we do small group personalized training? So this might be something you haven't heard before, but we'll train anywhere from 1 to 4 in a group. Each person will have their own workout that we write for them based on their goals, their current ability, and their interests. And we conduct sort of 4 individual workouts at one time so that we can see more people per hour, but it also makes it a little bit cheaper for the client. So it's more cost effective for them and it's more time efficient for us. So that's what we focus on. And we focus on the general population. So people who just want to get fit, people who've never worked out before, um, people who have had injuries, but also runners. I still like to focus on runners and people who are at just sort of like a road runner level that, you know, want to improve their 10K time or half marathon time. But I'll add to this, and I didn't put a slide on it, but I did have my time training elite athletes. I worked with national level runners back in BC. I also worked with national level runners back in BC while I lived here. So the coach flew me back to train them. And I also had a taste of training my first NHL player, Michael Ryder. So Michael Ryder came back. He's from here, obviously, and he had a bad back. So one summer he trained with me. I got rid of his back pain, and he went into his last year, his last season, pain-free. So I was really proud of that because I was able to take what he did with his strength and conditioning coach with the Devils, but pick out flaws that he was still doing in his exercises, change up the exercises, made sure that there was no more stress to the back, made his back pain go away, and then got him ready for his last year. So like I said, I still enjoy the sort of general population, but I did have my time training elite athletes, which is also really cool. I've had a couple national level runners fly here just to train with me because of all my experience training runners and my experience writing for magazines. So that is also something that has brought clients to me, is writing for magazines gives you credibility, and it makes people want to work with you because it seems like you know what you're talking about, which is kind of cool. So that's how that sort of positively influenced my in-person training career. So today, JKC sees 100 unique clients weekly. Some of these clients might train 2 to 3 times a week. So we might be anywhere up to 180 workouts per week, depending on how busy we are. Like I said, we're turning 8 this May, which is really cool. I am currently still a freelance fitness writer, and I have regular articles in Canadian Running magazine. So that magazine that I first got in 2009, I am still now a regular article contributor to them, and also their sister publication, Triathlon Magazine Canada. So every issue that comes out, I have an article in it. So I know that's recurring, and I know that's really cool. And online sites, that's another medium that I think is going to be more prominent the more that we go through life. When I started writing, magazines were like, that was a shit. Like that was where you wanted to write. But now with magazines kind of dying out, there's more digital magazines and websites that are kind of more popular to write for. You can still get paid when you write for websites. So I'm a regular contributor to another running website called podiumrunner.com, but I also write for bodybuilding.com. If you guys are familiar, I've written for T Nation, and I've also even written for Arnold Schwarzenegger's personal blog, which is, I think, really cool too. If you guys want to find out about me on YouTube, we have a page called Stronger Runner. So again, tailoring towards running. And then we're at JK Conditioning on all our social channels. So quick little pros and cons about my career and my path. It's super rewarding. It's very satisfying, and you do get a sense of accomplishment when you take someone from A to B. They followed your coaching, your guidance, and they achieve a certain goal, or they become pain-free, or they just feel better about themselves. And this is what I strive for every day, is to change someone's life with exercise and with working out. And it's why I go to work every day. It's also nice because every client is different. Every person presents to you a different history, a different goal. Even though, you know, teaching a squat is a squat, but someone might need different coaching cues than someone else. Someone might learn cues differently than someone else. Someone might need you to show rather than tell. Someone might need you to tell rather than show. So it's every client challenges your ability to know the material so that you can teach it in different ways, which is what I love about the job, because it's not just going to a gym and being in a gross sweaty gym all day. It's using knowledge, it's using kinesiology and applying it to people who have no idea about what their bicep muscle is, or what their hamstring is, or what the function of the hamstring is during running, but teaching them this, and them noticing, oh, this does feel better. It's those moments that are great because you're instilling knowledge on someone and changing their life through fitness. The strength and conditioning field is still young. There's still a lot of research that's coming out, and I find that there's a lot of anecdotal evidence about workouts and what's effective and what's not. And the field is young and sort of slowly catching up. But that's another thing that's great, is that there's always something to know, and you can never know everything. There's always something to learn and change your perspective on. Some cons with the industry is that it can be very exhausting. You can have long hours where you have to see clients that want to train before they go to work, which means you need to go to the gym before they go to work to train them. So this could be at 6 a.m. Some trainers start at 5 a.m. I don't do that. I start at 6 on some days, but some days I'll work late and I'll have to work up to 9 o'clock at night because they can only go to the gym after work. So depending on how you write your schedule, if you work by yourself, then you need to have sort of an idea of how you need to structure yourself so that you have some sort of work-life balance. You are on your feet all day and you can't be off. You can't have a client come to you and want to do their session with you, and then you're sort of feeling sad or feeling upset about someone who honked at you on the drive to work. You have to be sort of almost in a acting type state where it's like nothing matters. This is their time. They're paying you for it. This session is all about them. It's not about you. It's not you going on your phone. It's not you going on Instagram while they're training in front of you. You give them your undivided attention, which is why they will probably stick with you, and why they would probably see results is because you're dedicating your time and your effort and your energy to them each time they come to the gym. So the person that comes to see you at 6 a.m., that should be the same person they see for a 7 p.m. session, meaning that you need to be just as on as you are at 6 a.m., just as on as you are at 7 p.m. That's just the nature of the job. That's how it goes. You can't be quiet and sad and mopey or low energy. It just won't work. So we're almost done. Thanks for listening so far. This is just my advice. So if you want to own your own business, it's 24/7. There is not a time where you're not thinking about what you can do for work or what you need to do on the administrative side of things. It is all day, every day, whether you have staff or if you don't, if you have a physical space or you don't, if you're just online or if you're not, it's 24/7. You can get a job at a gym, and when you leave the gym, you might be done work and not have to worry about it. But if you want to own your own business and run the show, it's all day, every day. Some things that you need to understand is that you need to crunch numbers. You need to know how much rent do you need to pay? How much overhead do you need to pay? What equipment do you need up front? Do I need a booking system? When I first started, I did everything by hand. I had to book clients through my Apple app because I didn't know of any systems out there that sort of did the booking for me. I had to do reminder emails every day by myself. I had to keep track of clients' tabs by myself. All these different tasks added hours and hours to my week that were not training hours. What insurance do you need? What memberships do you need to have? Do you need a website? Yes, you probably should have a website. Do you need to pay for this website? Do you need to pay a web designer to design the website? Will you be advertising? Will you be using Google AdWords, Facebook advertising, Instagram advertising? Will you have ads in the paper? Will you have ads on the radio? These are all things you need to think about, and it's not just a fitness business. Any business that you would sort of own or start yourself, these are things that you need to consider. And like I said, you're not just a trainer. You're going to wear many hats. You're going to be cleaning toilets. You're going to be scrubbing showers. You're going to be taking out garbage. You're going to be, if you're doing a one-on-one, you might be a psychologist. Someone might just be opening up to you, and you're just like, I just want to train you. I'm not really trained to listen to you talk about your marriage issues or your kids or whatever. You're going to be wearing many hats, and you need to be ready to take all this responsibility on. You need to have either a natural business sense, or you need to go to business school or take business courses on how to run a business. Luckily for me, I have this business sense, and I like to always work at it. So luckily, I don't have a master's in business. I don't have any business courses. I read some business books, but for me, it just kind of came to me through sort of satisfying people and doing what I know needed to be done. You need to be highly organized so you can organize your schedule, so you can organize workouts, so you can organize exercises that people need, especially when you're doing small group training. You have 4 workouts going on at once. So you need to be able to tend to everyone. And again, this brings me back to customer service. This industry is customer service. And from day one, my first job to today, I'm practicing customer service all day, every day. Pick a niche. Who do you like to train? When I started at Burnaby Square, I knew I didn't really like the active rehab side of things, but I knew I liked general population. So that's the niche I went with. I also like running. So that's the niche that I went with. I don't like training bodybuilders. I don't like training people for basketball. I just like training runners. So that's the niche that I work with. And also too, if you're going to go into this industry, do you want to trade time for dollars? If you have someone in front of you, that's the only time you're going to get paid. Is there a way that you can make money in other ways? So for me, it was writing articles, but again, that still had me writing and trading my time for work. Well, having my first staff member is a way that I could make money and not being at work. I also want to come out with products and a book one day. Those are ways that I can make money while not working. These are called revenue streams. And this doesn't just apply to the fitness industry. Like I said earlier, you got to network if you want to sort of connect with different professionals. If you want to get a job in the industry, you might sort of meet someone. And at the time you realize like, oh, probably nothing. But maybe a year down the road, they'll be like, hey, I met you at this conference a year ago, and I remember you. I have an idea for you. So, that's how something could start. And as I said earlier, I did a lot of learning after university. I read often. I spend as much money on books as you can, listen to podcasts as often as you can, and take courses as often as you can, because what you want to do is learn as much stuff that you can take away from to make it your own and have your own philosophy and your own way of coaching people. And also fail, and fail often. I never once said how many times I got rejected from editors and from clients who trained with me once or twice and then never came back. I was like, oh my God, is it me? Did I do something wrong? But you have to learn that you can't take anything personal in this industry, and that you need to trust yourself and know that you're doing the best you can. You're not hurting anyone, and you're doing what you can with what you know at the time. Be adaptable. If your sort of ideas change with exercises or with what you want to do, let that change happen, because that meant that you learned something along the way. Last bit of advice, if you do want to get into the personal training industry, my friend, I can say that I know him and I hung out with him before. His name's Jonathan Goodman. He wrote a book called Ignite the Fire. This is a book for personal trainers. And I'll leave you with a quote that I love from Bruce Lee: adapt what is useful, reject what is useless, and add what is specifically your own. And this is what I did. This is what I've been doing in my career, is taking what I think is useful for me and what will help me, and then also just kind of ignoring information that I think wouldn't help me, but maybe being open to the idea that you could revisit it, and then at one point it could be useful for you in the future. Whew, there we go. That's it. Hopefully I didn't go over. I don't even know what time it is. 10 o'clock.
All right, John. We are a bit over, so
Sorry about that.
oh, no problem. That was great. That was you actually given me some great ideas too. But I'm also looking at writing a book. Anyway,
Cool.
yeah. So very interesting. One thing, I don't see any more questions coming in, but one thing I wanted to point out, which really struck me because it's a huge similarity between you and I,
Mm,
and that it relates to this course. In this course, students do a lot of writing, journal entries and so on. And I'm sure most of them probably hate it. I know
mm,
I would have when I was an undergrad.
sure.
You said you didn't like writing.
No.
I didn't like writing in high school. I didn't like English courses in
Hmm.
university.
Me
They
too.
were always my lowest marks.
Hmm.
And now, like yourself, I'm a published author many times over.
Mm,
Mine is not like yours. Mine is research. You got to pay
yeah.
for it, which is great, and that's what I do.
Yeah.
So one thing I wanted to say, I think, and it applies probably to more than just writing. If there's something that you don't like, maybe it's just an aspect of that you're not getting, that you're not doing correctly, or it's not the right type of thing that you're doing.
Mm,
So I feel like I'm babbling now, but we didn't like writing. What we learned was we
no.
just didn't write writing what we had to write in school. We wanted to
Exactly.
write what we wanted to write.
Hmm.
Um, so I thought that was a really interesting point, but we are out of time there now, and students probably have other class to get to. But I want to say thanks again, John. That was an amazing presentation. Really nice see you through your background and how far you've come along the way. And
Thank you.
yeah, thanks again. Really
Sorry
appreciate
for
it.
going over. Thanks for listening, everyone. And if you have any questions, you can ask Kevin and he can forward the questions on to me.
Excellent. All right. Thanks. Some thank yous coming in and out. All right. Take care, John.
Thank you.